First of all, what is instrumental transcommunication? It is the communication between our physical plane of life and the other dimensions through electronic devices. Which devices? Anyone that we have at home, such as television, computer, cameras, telephone, cell phone, anything can be used by the other side to communicate with us. The communication in this way through technology can be either in voice or in image, which is also possible as in video. And I'll show you some trans images that I got in a, let's say, in a technology that I created myself, which is over the vapor of humidifier. Okay, and this happened in truth casually. One day it was very hot here, and I turned it on, the humidifier, and I was recording casually, and then I perceived that some images was being shaped over the vapor. So then I decided to start doing that more specifically. These are still from the first day I was just sat down and turning on the humidifier, and now appeared, which is a very common image that we received from the other side. The owl seems to be the symbol of the race of the friends with whom we are in contact. And in this other side, you see also a small head created over the vapor. But later, obviously, this got better, and we could receive images created over the vapor, but that we could identify. For instance, this is Amber, and she is Lisa's daughter, a friend of mine from US, and obviously she could recognize her daughter. This is Olivia. She is Jennifer's daughter. All these people are from US, and Olivia died in a car accident, and she appeared in the vapor. This is Roger. He is Amy's dad, and curiously, he appeared much younger than the age that he died. Dr. Howdiff is my main communicator on the other side, and he appeared in many different ways, also in the vapor. And I am with him about some 30 years now. He was one of the first to start this work with me. And this is Dean. He is Mala's son. And it is so curious, the capacity of our communicators, not only of shaping, but sometimes giving some details to identify the persons that they are sending. This is Melissa. She is Patricia's daughter. And obviously Patricia quickly identified her daughter, Melissa. She passed due to a heart issue. This is Alessandro. Alessandro died at the age of 58 years old, and he is our friend Diana's fiancé. Again, we see that the loved ones appear much younger than the age that they passed. It was also the case of Alessandro. He passed of cancer at the age of 58. Even so, he appeared something like a young man of 20 something. And here is the video when Alessandro appeared. You can see the vapor. I was using a plastic egg and the vapor surrounding it. And that is the image of Alessandro, much younger, as you can see. And he vanishes in the vapor again. This is Sandra Champlain. She has a very known radio show. And we were in Orlando when I made the test with many attendees of the event. And Sandra was the organizer, but she also participated of my tests. And in front of each group had 10 persons. And so all the phenomenon happened in front of the persons present. That was at least 10 persons watching the phenomenon live. This was an attendee of the same event in Orlando. And we were trying to use the humidifier there with each attendee. And when this girl was in front of the camera and with the vapor aside her, this image was created. And later she identified it as being her fiancé. Then she sent the photo. So this is, in truth, a very short explanation, just for us to know what I'm talking about, right? So let me just stop sharing.
Great.
Okay.
It looks like very interesting research indeed. As you say, it's very, I suppose, objective in the sense that you can look at it and you can instantly identify. And I mean, they're certainly some of the clearest images I've seen of what people would call paranormal apparitions, I suppose. So I suppose how does the process work exactly of that sort of communication?
You mean how the other side works?
Yes, or I suppose more, what's the process that you follow to participate in one of those communication sessions?
Well, I think that from days to days, I usually change all the way that I'm using to record. For instance, I was using paper as I showed, but that way I don't use anymore. Yesterday, I was testing with the static of, static. And it was amazing, the results, because we perceived that the other side could bend the light, could shape the light. So this is something that, in truth, is something that, as Einstein would say, this would be impossible because it is not possible to control the light. And even so, our spiritual friends shows that they can control the light, they can hold it, they can change the direction of the light and shape something. A face, for instance, this in the static. So I think that these friends show to us that their technology or their science is something completely different to ours. And obviously, it would be very difficult for a terrestrial scientist to explain how they could do that. Obviously, I also have no idea, but my let's say my task is just to register.
Yes, just to show that the phenomena happens.
Yes.
Yes. So, how long have you been looking at this kind of area, and what got you interested in it to begin with?
Oh my God! Can you please repeat this slowly?
So, how long have you been in this subject, and what got you interested in it to begin with?
Okay. Wow, long ago, maybe more than your age. It was about 30 something years ago. I was interested because I thought that this was something that I could really observe if it was real or not. And this was something that was quite interesting for me, because I was thinking by that time that whenever you choose a religion or any thing for you to follow, if you are not sure, that this will be a waste of time. And I was thinking by the time, it was possibly your age, I was thinking that I didn't want to waste so much time. Imagine when you are 50 years old, you discover that, oh my God, all this was not real, and something else was the reality. So I decided to go through this way and started recording to verify if the phenomenon was real. But yes, of course, the vision that I had by the time is completely different the one that I have now. But obviously, the phenomenon showed it to be much more, much bigger than what I could expect. Many different doors appeared. So I discovered many things. But by that time, it was just because it was an objective phenomenon. And I thought that this was something important.
Quite right. And I think the whole field of spirit communication, life after death, consciousness is possibly the most important questions that humanity has ever asked. So it's important to know how these kind of things work. So do you use, or can you use, any medium really of communication? So static, smoke, water, anything like that, and sound as well, I suppose.
If I understood your question, I would say that the medium the resource that I use are always something physical, let's say, even electronic, but it is physical. I used it for a long time, cloth or paper, and they could design over it, bubble plastic, and all sort of resources. They show it to be capable to use, and to show that this is an intelligent communication. It is not a casuality. You cannot imagine that when a face appears, it is a casualty. Even if it was one or two, okay, it could be, but not some thousands as we have. And happily, I am not only recording, but I care of documenting everything that I do every day. So I think that I have by now more than 60 e-magazines besides the books. But the magazines are better because in the magazines you can have the voices, you can have the videos, you can have the images. So it is multimedia, while the previous books that I wrote wasn't. So I think I replied your question.
Yeah, that's great. So how do the spirits actually interact with the resource? So I'd imagine you start off with a piece, let's say a piece of cloth. And what do you do with the cloth, and how do the spirits come through and manipulate it?
Yeah, I can send you, if you want, some examples so that you can insert. My view of the phenomenon is obviously different of people usually imagine this, how it works. And I also had another vision, but in the late years, mainly after Tesla announced it to be the coordinator, things started changing very quickly. So this was about the last 6 years. So in this time, 5 or 6 years, which is a short time, let's say, the phenomenon that was going very, very slowly, all of a sudden, it is going so fast now and developing. In each recording, they show something new. So the cloths and papers I used some years ago, I don't use them anymore, because Tesla requested to use electronic things for them to work, such as the static, which is obviously, we suppose, much more difficult to work, but that is what they prefer. And maybe just to show their capabilities, right? So you asked how I use the cloth. I usually, well, first of all, they need light. So the cloth cannot be, let's say, a plain one without shine. It has to be something that has some shine. Okay, so these cloths that are used for making dresses of parties that has some shiny, all this is very interesting because what you use in truth is the light, right? So whenever you move the cloth and the light changes for them, it is when they can create the images. They can either design or in other occasions, not only they design over what I'm holding, for instance, but also they can also send direct files, which is obviously much more perfect. But that is, it is happening a bit slowly, these transmissions of complete files, digital files.
Right. So you mentioned Tesla. Was Nikola Tesla a proponent of this kind of work?
He, well, Tesla, obviously, the inventor, it was so interesting because by the 2014, once I received the communication by voice, mentioned that I was recording with the husband of a friend, a Canadian friend of mine, and he, Mr. Murray, said that Tesla was joining to coordinate all the transmissions for Earth. And then my first thought was, who Tesla? Nikola Tesla. I thought, oh, that is impossible. No, Tesla will not talk to me. And then after a certain time, it was not necessary to confirm in any other way, because the phenomenon itself showed that something absolutely, not a technology only, but it is a huge, huge science. It is their science. I think that what they have now will be reached by mankind within some decades or maybe centuries. But it is absolutely ahead of our science.
Yes. So Nikola Tesla is one of the spirits that frequently comes through to you to, I suppose, to help you.
Not that frequent. He is the boss. Uh-huh. But whenever well, he's kind. Whenever I make questions straight to him, he usually replies. But I also avoid not to be, bothering him. But he gave many very interesting replies, and it was published in our e-magazine about the communication with the unborns, because I wanted to know if unborns, persons that was not born yet, that they died because of a miscarriage or abortion. So I wanted to know if these fetus, let's say, these children could also speak, but I couldn't initially, I didn't know how to address a question to the children themselves. I didn't know if they were able to reply. So I addressed all the questions first to Tesla, and he started replying in name of each one of the fetus that I was referring, that I was assisting, I think, 12 moms that lost boys and girls or babies in this condition. So I was asking about each one in name of the mother, because the majority didn't have a name because they were not born. So Tesla was replying, and it is so curious because he informed when the fetus would be a boy or a girl, and many curious information. So, but I usually don't. I avoid. Well, obviously, if he wants to talk to me, I'm ready. But I avoid.
I'm sure he must
But
be
I
very
think that
busy.
the technology talks by itself.
Yes, true. So I'm curious. How did you manage to completely identify that it was Tesla you were talking to? Was it via image, via sound?
No. I think that to exist some voice recording, but that is not how it works. As I say, let's say that if it is not Tesla or whoever it is, these guys know what they are doing. It is a huge phenomenon, right? Now, whenever I wanted to talk to someone, it is like this. They cannot create the sound, mainly if you wanted some a dialogue.
Yes.
Right. For instance, at the beginning, when the pioneers started, they usually they perceived that they need a sound in our space time, any sound. Obviously, later we discover that there are sounds that are better than others. For instance, it is many persons use it, the pioneers. For instance, the shower opened, or that type of noise. But this, in truth, later I was working on this so many years, and then I perceived that it's the best for them to keep the sound clean. You have to offer in our side voice, okay, and avoid dirty sound. For instance, shh. This is horrible for them because this spectrum is too large, and what interested for them is a very small range. So a range of a frequency. So all the rest will come into the sample of audio as dirty, to be noisy. The voice will not be clean. So if we want clean voice, we have to use voice. Now, obviously, I had to work on this for some years to discover how to offer to the other side a voice, clean, but that you cannot understand any word. Okay, so it is you can recognize, for instance, oh, this is how do this voice, but obviously there is no content.
Yeah,
it is completely only syllables, all sort of some sound that has no sense, right? And the idea is that whenever you play in our side this sound, which has no meaning, they will reorganize into the replies of your question. So it is very important for you to have the question together so that you can observe if it makes sense or not, if it is a reply or not, right? And that is so. In the case of Tesla, I had to use a voice. I don't remember which one. I got a voice of a person who has a beautiful voice, a man, actor, and then I broke it in old syllables and then mixed it old, and so I play that. So I say that it is Tesla replying not because of the identification of the voice. In this case, it is not possible, but for the technology, for the content, more for this, not for recognition.
Yes. So What do you hope to I suppose to prove or to evidence by doing the work you do? Is it to, for example, show that spirits exist, or that spirits can communicate, or that we go on as spirits? What's your main purpose?
Oh, yes, I have a big list of purposes. In truth, I am preparing some items that casually I have had handy here, because it is something that I intended to write about. And look, one thing, whenever you talk about mediumistic communication, we will need a witness. It is a subjective phenomenon, usually quite difficult to be of evidence that you can, let's say, establish as a reality.
True.
You may make a consult to a medium and you say, oh, but she was great. She said the name of my grandpa. Well, but that is your interpretation. It is not something that can be mentioned as a real truth, worldwide truth for everybody. So, but instrumental transcommunication makes this possible because exactly of using devices. And so the communication is, the phenomenon is absolutely impossible to be, let's say, faked. For instance, if you observe the quantity of trans images that are registered in a video, you'd say, no, this is not human. It's not possible, because they are, for instance, a video has 30 frames per second, right? They are able to create or to insert, we don't know precisely which is the process, but whatever it is in the video, they can insert, let's say 20 images in 1 second, and usually very clear images. This is not human. You cannot fake it. Or if you try, it will take some 1 year maybe for you to make it 1 second, right? So replying to your question, what I intended to prove with my work. Well, instrumental transcommunication make possible, for instance, time trip in the life of the person. We have many cases in which I was questioning about any deceased one, and not only they sent the image of the deceased one as they may look presently, but also as when they were child, for instance, in many different ages. It is something as being able to reach the akashical file, because how can they know how I looked like when I was 5 years old, then 10 years old, then 15 years old, and they do that. So this, and I have many magazines showing these time trips. So these beings show that somehow they can extract, I don't know from where, this kind of information, right? Another thing also that proves that afterlife is a reality is the fact that many times I register among the known ones, the deceased ones that we know, also many children, let's say, of unknowns. And then later, when we spread the magazines, many mothers write to us and say, that is my son. And obviously, I had no idea who that child was. So these unknowns, I think it's something that implies that it cannot be a fake, because there are persons from New Zealand, from Australia, persons that I have never heard. So in truth, as I said, there are many topics that make instrumental transcommunication to be powerful for proving afterlife. And that is, let's say, my last goal. In truth, what I'm doing is just what I can do, which is just to raise it, to make the phenomenon happen. But I consider extremely important, and I'm trying all the way to have all these cases authenticated.
Yes.
Because one thing is the mother to recognize. Obviously, it is important, and obviously it is true, and she is happy, but I need scientific documents. I need mathematics analysis, and I'm going behind all this. But the problem is that the majority of the scientists are afraid to put their names in this.
Yes.
So the problem is not the other side that are not doing their task. It's this our side, right? But I think that everything has its correct time, and we will reach it.
That was actually my next question. What is mainstream science's opinion of your work? I'm sure that you face a lot of criticism, a lot of skepticism, and perhaps even a lot of accusations that it is fake.
Look, one thing first, I don't have time to read all opinions, either positive or negative, because either I do the research or I keep in social networks. And happily, I have some friends that care of these communications for me. So that one friend of mine in Brazil cares of our Facebook, another cares of Instagram, and we have the website. It's another person. So that I keep it just focused in my research. And obviously, also, I wouldn't care mainly nowadays if someone says that, oh, this is fake. Okay, it is good that this person doesn't insist. Otherwise, we'll have to go to court because I cannot admit a lie. But it doesn't matter because what I'm doing is mainly helping the other side. The work, the technology, everything is not ours. The project is not ours. The project is theirs. So possibly, I think that maybe you will have time, and maybe I don't, to see these correctly, properly authenticated. But it doesn't matter. I think that someone had to do what I'm doing now for someone carrying on in the future. And then finally, these to become a universal truth in the time that the other side will determine it. So, but there is no hurry. And if someone doesn't believe, oh, it doesn't matter for me. I'm doing what I have to do. For 35 years, I worked without even ever getting 1 cent, 1 penny. Never. I never charged for my work. Only from 2 years from now, a friend of mine from US had the idea of making a Patreon. And that was the first time that I could not to buy the things from my pocket, but from then I have some support. But even so, happily, it is not a large quantity. I think that this is not good. And mainly, this forces me to invent the things as I can. And I have some inventions that is sometimes very funny because I go to my kitchen and then I decided to use this or that. And so it seems that this maybe is important for the other side because this shows that the technology is not ours. Because if I use something very ridiculous and it works, obviously it is not that. It is their work, right?
Yes.
So I think that's it.
Great. I'm curious, what's your opinion on a lot of the shows that you see on television and now on the internet of paranormal investigations where people use sound recorders and radiation recorders to apparently connect with spirits in a haunted location? What do you think about that kind of work? Does that seem legitimate and authentic?
You mean you refer to paranormal, these paranormal presentations? You mean with the devices or mediumistic?
When you see people go into haunted places with a sound recorder and they record sounds and yeah.
Oh, okay. Look, this is something very interesting. I think that obviously with time, all these will be more clear and so on. But as per what I see, whenever a person starts recording, they, for instance, let's suppose that I never did anything for this, and then I get I take a recorder and start recording by my own. Then what happens? Initially, the persons will not have, let's say, a serious support or let's say an important support from the other side, because he or she is just beginning. So the first communications, if the person receives, you'll be something like a whisper, something that is not clear, because it is done by spirits that are around. So it is very important to separate the things. For instance, whenever someone goes to a graveyard to record, as I saw sometimes in television and so, this is something that I would never do, not even in the beginning, much less now. But what happens is that indeed there are some deceased ones that remained, for instance, in the graveyard or in houses, because they don't know either that they are dead or because they don't know where to go, because they are, let's say, abandoned by the family. They were not loved. Nobody thought of them anymore. So they remain in the graveyard sometimes, just doing nothing, keeping, just letting time to pass by. But it happens that they are able, yes, to insert whenever you are not a very, let's say, if you are not a serious person and you want to just to make fun and see if these works or not, what will happen is that some spirits that are around, they will work as a symphony, as something that it makes empathy with you. So you will attract this type of communicators, right? People that are around. It may be it is a family member, for instance, a grandpa may not have gone out of the house because he feels better in the house and nobody can oblige him to go to another place. He is free to remain in the house if he wants, or she, or whatever. So let's say that whenever you start, you will have initially the communication of these beings around. What in truth obviously may not be interesting. In long term, these can be a bit complicated, right? Because they are not, let's say, persons, souls in condition to help or anything. They need help themselves. So this is one thing. This is what many times is showed in those shows that you mentioned. And yeah, they can make a noise, for instance, and then can be recorded. And then obviously the public will think, oh, wow, that there was a noise. So this is real. But this is real, but that's not important. The important is whenever, after some years, as my case, after 35 years, you got the confidence of the other side. And then obviously they need this to invest in the person, because obviously this implies in high technology, in a huge work, much more complicated than we can ever think. So obviously they have to invest in the person, and they have to know that this person will not give up tomorrow, and obviously this is very, very common I know some 1,000 people that started recording for 1 month or two, and then that's it. So what is important is the difference. And I tell you, I think that with time, these will be more and more proved that the communications from a station, I say that they use transmission stations where those inventors that worked for mankind when they were here, they join again to do something good for humanity, and something maybe is just the communication. So there are some transmission stations in the other side preparing to communicate with us. So there is this difference about those shows that you said are something local, something that is got here. It is not something that will progress, but whenever you have a contact established with a transmission station, these go fast and it can progress very quickly. It's very different, both things.
Mm-hmm. So it's a common worry among people, especially religious people, that contacting those that have passed on or spirits may lead to things like demon possession or bad spirit communication. What do you think to that kind of worry?
Look, again, we are talking about the same thing, because whenever you are, for instance, we have to remember that everything that we face in life is related to your previous lives. I think that with my experience, at least, I cannot imagine that this is the first life that we're living and we are here fresh. No. So we have, let's say, many things to accomplish. So obviously, it will depend on how we'll carry on your life. You will have better companies, spiritual companies, or bad companies, very similar to your life on earth as it is. For instance, let's suppose that a person uses drugs and take alcohol, and this person is compromising his or her life, and will attract the kind of spirits that make sympathy to that style of life, that type of vibration, right? So obviously, there are lots of persons in our side that are still in what I would say as a reference of Indian philosophy, that it is the karma. So if the person is attached to his or her karma, the life will turn around the problems that she or he has. And these may attract, let's say, these brothers in spirit that are suffering, that are also interested in drugs, in alcohol, because these are more common than persons imagine. So if the opposite, you try to be honest, you try to help people, you try to use your life for a good purpose, for sure, your friends will not be the drugged one, the alcoholic. So if you say, is that a risk? Is there a risk of recording these low communicators? Yes, it will depends on you. If you, with your life, attract good spirits, good friends, because your intention is good, because you are a good person, there is no problem. But if you have nothing to do and say and think, oh, let me see, I'll play with these. Well, that is a risk. This may happen indeed.
And that might be why a lot of people that use Ouija boards, for instance, often report having demons coming through, or which are. Do you believe that there are such things as demons, or just spirits of lower energy.
Please say again.
So do you believe that there are things that people would call demons, I suppose?
Oh. Well, no, not in this, let's say, biblical interpretation, no. But I think, yes, we have levels of evolution. For instance, you may be in contact with a person who you perceive is that has a noble character. It's a person that is decent, is honest. And so you can say that he or she is a good spirit, but you can also know persons that are horrible. So these, in the other side, could be considered by religions, mainly the Catholicism, as the demons. But for me, they are just persons that are not, that didn't make the right path, but will have to do it somehow in a certain moment of the life.
Yes. So you mentioned a doctor on the other side that you work with a lot. What was his name?
Who?
You mentioned a doctor that you work with from the other side quite a lot in your presentation.
Konstantin Raudev.
Yes. So is he kind of part of a group that is helping to open communication from our world to theirs?
Yeah, in truth, obviously, nowadays, everything is very well established. I would say that possibly what I call transmission station is something bigger, let's say, than your BBC of London. I mean, it is possibly a huge places with incredible technology, with inventors working on how to manage all these, how to reach us, because they have many problems that we have no idea. For instance, they have to reach us in our time. And time is something that they have to manage to be quite sure, quite precise. And also they have to reach us in, let's say, geographically. So it is something that and they are not here. That is the point. They are not here. It is different if they were, let's say, with a station in Europe or in North America. No, they are not in our dimension. So they have lots of problems to solve to reach us, right? So so I say that now I think that the world was already solved, let's say. But obviously they wanted to progress, and for instance, we are trying to reach a point of a dialogue, which is not possible yet. But I'm sure that one day it will. But it depends much more than the other of the other side, not ours, because it is always their technology. We are simply receptors. Up to now, there is no device that is able to access the other side. So Dr. Raudev, when he was alive, he was a pioneer, one of the two important pioneers of instrumental transcommunications. By the year 1960, more or less, when he was alive, he wrote a book and included a cassette tape with many voices that he got on cassette tape by his time. And after that, he was first announced to be working over Europe, mainly to a couple in Luxembourg. And then as these people started not to being too much interested in ITC anymore, he was transferred to South America. And that was about 30 years ago when we started.
How if communication between us and the other dimension is as difficult as you say for the other side, how do spirits of those that have just died, for instance, often come through to their loved ones who are still alive?
Oh, I'm sorry. Say again.
So if it is very difficult for the other side to come through to us, how do the deceased loved ones who have maybe only just passed send us signs that they're still there?
I didn't understand. I'm sorry.
So
I didn't understand.
when somebody dies, say, and you go to the funeral, often quite soon after their death, they come through and send signs that they're still there.
Ah, yes.
So how do they manage that?
Yeah, look, yes, again, we are talking about those that are here around, that may remain here or not. It will depend on the evolution of this soul. But yes, in the funeral, for sure, he will be watching himself and observing the family, and will obviously, but this has no connection with the communication, right? He's just there. Yes.
So they're people who are still around the earth and haven't gone as far as the others who are trying to communicate.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
see.
And happily, I think that there is a huge number of persons, of souls that remain around because they don't know many times that they are dead, and because unhappily religions teach everything wrong. That is my conclusion now, since my beginning, because I started because of this, to be sure of what religion says, if it was real or not. And then you see that they teach something wrong that cannot be proved. And if someone says, for instance, oh, but we cannot measure God. No, I would say we can. That's not exactly God, but because, well, my view is different. But I think that, yes, you can document all these and investigate it. So you can prove the phenomenon happens and the communication happens and the afterlife is real. So if this is real, it means that many, many religions are teaching wrongly. The principle of the many religions of the world, the three great religions, unhappily, are wrong because it cannot be proved. And what we do can. We can prove that afterlife is real, but they cannot prove about heaven, about hell, about anything.
Yes. So why do you think it is that if ITC, as you say, gives such strong evidence of an afterlife or some form of spiritual world, why do you think mainstream science is so slow to pick it up or so anti the science that you do?
Well, first of all, what I do is not exactly important. I mean, uh, what has to be done, it will, and so on. But I think that I do understand, because it is so difficult to make a career in the area of hard sciences. And then something somewhat funny happened some time ago. I had a curious case because I was just filming. I usually presently use a cell phone to record the videos, and there was an image. If you want, then I can send it to you. It is
Sure.
in one of our e-magazines, and so I had one cell phone hold still, and then I was with another one and filming around,
Right.
and there was nothing in front of the cell phone that was still and hold. So, but when I filmed, there appeared in the screen of the cell phone a person looking quite similar to Tesla, right? So I was very interested in having that verified if it was true, and that was nothing in front that could be, let's say, a photo of someone or even a photo of Tesla. No, it appeared only in the screen of the cell phone. And then I sent it to forensic expert. He makes investigation in videos and voices and so on. And then he said to me, okay, so I can do it since you don't use my name. Well, okay, I accepted. I published exactly this information, and what he wrote, he testified that it was real, and there was a face there, and there was nothing in front. But I mentioned he didn't authorize me to use either his name or his office, and I understand. These he said this could be a suicide of a professional career.
Right. Yes, indeed. And
So,
it seems to be, unfortunately, as I said earlier, it's one of the most important, I think, researches that needs to take place, and yet so many people are so reluctant to do it because it strays so far out of our science, and it's seen as pseudoscience, which is unfortunate.
yeah, sure. But maybe also we have to consider this detail of the correct time, because imagine, for instance, obviously we are going slowly to verifying who could make the analysis and so on. If this would be said worldwide that this is real, and this would be an implosion of the religions, because people would say, oh my God, that was not what I learned. So instead of being a good thing, this could be make a confusion to persons. So I think that everything has the correct time. And I think that mankind is not prepared yet to know about this, because it is very comfortable whenever you trust in a God that will help you in all your problems, and no matter what you do, he is so good that he will help you. It is wonderful. Whenever you trust that afterlife is a reality, you are responsible for your life. You are responsible for all your actions. And so God will not help you anymore. So it's something that changed.
Yes.
So people has to be prepared.
Yes. And one last phenomenon I'd like to ask you about is the experience of while we're alive, of having an out-of-body experience. There are several people who believe that they go to afterlife realms while they're out of body. Does that seem like something that would be possible?
Yes, for sure. In truth, I have the electronic version of this that we're mentioning, not out of a body experience, let's say mediumistic, but through devices. And I tell you, it is something extremely interesting and important, but unhappily we have not time to focus this back again. But for some time, I decided to investigate if, look, if a dead person, the physical brain died, but still the consciousness is able, will survive, and is still able to communicate. So this has to be true also for living persons. Then I heard that a French spiritist, Allan Kardec, he created the spiritist doctrine. Allan Kardec had, by his time, about 150 years ago, he used it to make seances of communication, mediumistic, obviously. And he registered in some magazines he published that they were communicating with livings. For instance, they were in France, but once there appeared a lady from Brussels that spoke and gave information, and so, but she was alive, sleeping in Brussels. So I thought, well, if this is true, let's see if we can also prove
Do the
it.
same thing.
And yeah, so I first recorded it with children in coma, in hospital. And it was surprising what they informed. For instance, look at this interesting reply. I asked a child that was in the hospital in coma, so unconscious, let's say, in our side. And I asked about the doctors, about her sickness and so on. And then she said, the voice said, yesterday we went to the cinema. And I said, what? Did you go to the cinema? And then think this is an interesting information. Obviously, there are lots of hospitals in Earth that person, children or adults, are in coma and for any reason, or not in coma, but for other sickness, also cannot go out of bed. And why would they remain in the room all the time, doing nothing? So you perceive that there are good spirits that go, for instance, to this hospital where there are children, and take them for walks around. They take out of the hospital. They are spirits. They don't have to to remain in the bed. That would be extremely sad, right? So this was the first experiment that I made. But later, I went on trying communication with other livings. For instance, a person that had multiple sclerosis was unable to speak. Also, I have a wonderful case. It is a whole magazine about this girl. She is autistic and nonverbal. She doesn't speak here. And her mother was impressed with all the information that the girl spoke while she was sleeping. So the mother made with me the communication, because whenever the girl was already sleeping, the mother would tell me, and then I started recording to talk to her, right? And then she mentioned the things that the mother was surprised, saying, for God's sake, I never imagined that she observed this in the house, because as she's autistic, it looked as if she was absent, was not perceiving anything, and that is not real. And also I made a recording with my father that was here before he died. He was with senile dementia, and he didn't speak anymore, and so on. So, and then to finish, I also made an experiment with healthy livings while sleeping, right? And also worked. So this, in truth, is something so interesting, because it shows that our consciousness has nothing to do with the brain. The brain may be dead, the brain may be damaged, the brain may not work at all. Even so, your consciousness is able to communicate. So I think that that is one of the doors that I mentioned to you that we discovered.
Yes. Do you find that those that are still living who communicate with you, do they remember having done so? Or do they...
Yeah, it was, for instance, I have a friend. He lived in US by the time, in Baltimore. Now he's back to Brazil. He's Brazilian, but he was living in US by that time when I made the recording. And I made some questions to him while he was sleeping there in Baltimore. And then I recorded with him while he was there sleeping. And then in the following day, I obviously listened to the recording and sent back to him. And then he said that, first of all, he said for years, he couldn't sleep well. Every night he went to bed, and each 2 hours he was awake, and then go around the house, had a bad sleep. And that night, he said he slept as ever he did in the late years. And he said that he saw, for instance, a place full of people, and a very huge place, very large. And he in the following day, he said he was, feeling totally well, a different way, So it is different.
It's different. Okay, brilliant. Well, I think I've asked everything I was interested in. Would you like to tell everybody where they can find you, how they can support you with your work?
Yeah, I think that the best is our Patreon, where we have everything that I do, I publish. So, for instance, today I finish in a magazine. I call it magazine. Usually it has more or less 50 or 60 pages. So it's a lot of material, including the videos that I recorded and how I recorded, all the descriptions and so on. So, and all these, each 10 days we publish in our Patreon. So whenever the person is interested in them in ITC, I'll be pleased to receive them. It is just to pay the attention that whenever I go to Patreon, it is, my name is written like Sonia dash Rinaldi. There is this dash in the middle.
Yes.
So it is not difficult to find me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Seeking Eye Life Exploration podcast. If you did and would like to continue following my research, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and following the podcast on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. You can also join our Facebook discussion group. You can find the link to this and other Seeking Eye online profiles at seeking-eye.com. Thank you.